Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad, and to my right we have
Benjamin B.
in the house. Finally, sheesh, where you been, Ben?
I've been here. Been running around. Been there, done that.
Listen, first things first, thank you for tuning into this episode. Thank you for listening on the podcast app. Thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you like this content, please feel free to share it with somebody that you think can benefit from it. And in the end, we're wanting to help you
turn your mess into your message.
That's right. We're trying to help you turn your mess into your message. And if you would like to reach out to us, you can always reach us, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com and
Ben at realrecoverytalk.com.
That was good, Ben.
Yeah, I pulled it together. I hit that quote too. I nailed it.
All right. Hey, listen, how's your new year been?
Just like last year, just rolls in. Time flies by. Nothing new.
Anything planned for the year? Like, what's your goals? Any goals?
No.
New year, new me, something?
Still on mess, Cheryl.
You're still on meth, Cheryl. This old new year, new me bolt.
If you haven't seen the Facebook, what is that, TikTok?
Yeah, it's like a TikTok meme.
Went viral.
Video or something. It's this little kid that lives in the trailer park. No offense to people that live in trailer parks, but he did a video and he's like, I'm sick of hearing about this new year, new me crap. Cheryl, you're still smoking meth. You tell me new year, new me. The only thing new this year is you're going to have a new baby daddy.
That's pretty good, Tom.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So find it. It's pretty funny. But no, in all seriousness, do you have anything going on? Any goals that you'd like to hit? I know you're doing the bodybuilding show.
No, not really. I mean, interestingly, I've kind of learned to just go with the flow. And, I never expected to be where I'm at in life today. Like, I don't really make plans anymore. I just kind of stick to principles and stick with the people that are good in my life, and opportunities come, and I don't know, man. So
this is slang for no. You haven't made
no. Just for today, Tom.
Just for today. Well, listen, full transparency. I have some goals that I would like to hit, but they're goals that I've had for years, and I kind of feel like I chip away at them, I guess. I'd like to retire at 40.
That's 2 years away.
I don't think that's going to be happening. We've had an interesting couple of weeks, and I do think that it's worth bringing up because it's kind of, frustrating in a sense. And I find myself, I sound like my dad a lot of times when talking to people that are in early sobriety. And, it's easy for us to give all this feedback and, tell people you should do this and you should do that. And we tell people all the time, you can't, or you should not should on people. It's rude to should on people, Ben.
I hear it.
And, but what we're finding, or at least from my experience, is over the past few weeks, we've seen a lot of people make very bad decisions based off of their sexual desires, I guess is the best way to put it.
Lust
is a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. And one of the things that I always tell clients is that I'm probably not telling you anything that I haven't been told myself. I'll just throw it out there. Tom and I were sitting here like, what are we going to talk about on the podcast today? And Tom started reading John C. Maxwell quotes.
Yeah, don't use his middle initial. I mean, everybody knows him as John Maxwell.
Well, the C is on the cover, so whatever. But anyway, Tom did a group the other day that he calls Match.com group. And basically, as the clients make a profile, what's that saying? Are you?
it's not my own, but it's a saying from Andy Stanley, who's the executive pastor of North Point or Truth or no, North, a big church. His dad's Charles Stanley. I believe it's North Point, but he did a series years and years and years ago called The Rules of Love, Sex, and Dating. And in that series, he says, are you the person that you are looking for is looking for?
So based off of this group, which ends up being a lot of fun, the clients, they make a profile up on the board of, a lot of times we'll have them pull up their actual profile because most of them have Tinder nowadays or whatever dating apps are out there. And you ask them to read it out loud, and it basically says, yeah, I drive a Mercedes. I live on Palm Beach Island. I'm an entrepreneur, this, that, the other. But the fact of the matter is we break it down and have them do a real profile, and basically just throwing it out there. Not that, and it's just not the time right now. Like when somebody needs to be focusing on their recovery, it's when you're having to look at the truth about the situation. What do you truly have to offer somebody right now? And Tom went outside the box a little bit. He actually told a story that I had never heard before from Tom about his.
I didn't know you were going to bring this up.
Oh, I thought this is what we agreed to talk about.
It's fine. I didn't know I was going to divulge all my skeletons.
Oh, I'll divulge mine too. We'll make it fun.
Okay.
Oh, because what was going on in my head, like I said earlier, very rarely do I sit a client down and I'm not saying to him like, hey, I'm only telling you this because I did the same exact thing, based off of experience. But Tom shared some of his rehab romance, so to speak, and he brought up some really good points, and Tom's a really good storyteller, so clients were laughing pretty hard. But why don't you roll with that, Tom? Tell us a little bit about it.
I think I might, Ben, because the people need to hear it, and it's based off of my own experience. So let me just lay some groundwork. And this could go on for 5 minutes or more, so strap in. But as Ben said, I'm a good storyteller. I found myself on September 16th, 2010, on a one-way flight to Jacksonville, Florida. And it was my first experience at treatment. And, lo and behold, I thought I was going to do the 45 days and go home. Obviously there was other plans. God had another plan for me, and I'm grateful for that. But I want to focus on what happened while I was there. In terms of relationships, I was there, and there was a female that I took a liking to. And this female was older than me. And I was 26 at the time, and I think she was 40. I mean, this is a long time ago. She had to have been close to 40 years old, but very pretty lady, tall, blonde, and I was attracted to her. The funny thing is that, we started talking, and we grew very close inside of, treatment. And we started communicating in ways that, I legit was in my mind thought that this is the person. I get sober and I meet the love of my life. Literally, these are the thoughts that are going on in my head. And this is cool, And, so whatever, we do our time there, and it was cool. And she lived in West Virginia, and, she ended up moving or going home, and she had a daughter, and we had this whole elaborate plan. And, looking back on it, it was more my plan than it probably was hers. But, I said, let me complete treatment. And, I knew by then I was going to go to West Palm for a little bit to do some sort of aftercare. But, I said, let me do some time there, and then I'll make my way up to West Virginia, and, we'll live this life with one another. And, I'm going to be a good dad. I had no idea what it was. Literally, I wasn't paying my own bills just 3 weeks ago, and all of a sudden I'm going to be a good father. But these were the things that were going on in my mind, and the delusion. I was living in this fantasy land And ultimately, what ended up happening is I went to West Palm. She went back home, and we communicated for a period of time. And then she just kind of dropped off. She stopped responding, stopped talking to. I don't know what happened or anything like that. Maybe she just got sick of me. I have no idea. But the point is that was my first real experience of grieving in a way. And it's hard to even say that, because how could you grieve somebody that you only knew literally for 5 or 6 weeks? But that was how strong I thought that this connection was with this person. And when she stopped communicating with me, I really got not depressed, but like, man, I really thought this was a real thing. And luckily I had people around me that, I could confide in, and they knew that I was really in a bad spot because of this. And that was a learning experience for me, because at that moment I knew that my priorities weren't where they needed to be. I was focusing more on external things. It was something that she made me feel good. She was good looking. She had a daughter. I wanted to be I wanted to be a dad. I wanted to be able to provide for her and do all this stuff in this fictitious, story that I'm telling in my mind, but I believed it all. And it was at that moment, well, maybe not that moment, but those next couple of days, I had a chance to reflect on that. And I remember distinctly deciding then and there that I'm not gonna look for it. I'm not gonna look to get into a relationship. I'm not going to pursue women. When and if God sees fit, it will happen. And some 3.5 years later, was when I met my wife. And I knew right at that moment, when I walked up the stairs of the church that I was going to, and I met her and I saw her, this is it, and that was one of the stories that I told our clients inside this group. And there was twists and turns and stuff, and I make them funny and they laugh and stuff like that. But the point is that, going back to that Andy Stanley quote, "Are you the person that you are looking for is looking for?" I wasn't that person. I was living in a halfway house. I was homeless. I didn't have a car. I was walking everywhere. I didn't have any money. Well, I did. I was collecting unemployment, but I had nothing. I had nothing to show for. And so I wasn't the person that I was looking for, and it was when I did meet my wife, I was then at a point, and I firmly believe that's when, God intervened in my life and said, "Okay, Tom, this is the person that I have for you." And fast forward now, I got my wife, I got 3 kids, I got 2 hamsters, 8 chickens, 3 dogs, and my dad living with me. So, be careful what you wish for. Moral of the story. I love my kids and my dad and my wife, but the dogs and the chickens and the hamsters, I could do away with and be quite all right. But anyways, that's my story.
I feel like the listeners would like to get to know the Tom that they always hear on the podcast. On a personal level, how'd you get in with your wife? What'd that look like? Let them get to know you. Come on.
So when I was going to a church down here called Christ Fellowship, great church, and I started. I've been a Christian my whole life, not practicing Christian my whole life, but I'm a Christian, and I started going to this church. And when I went to this one specific campus, I walked up the stairs, and there's my wife, Amanda, my current wife, But when I walked up the stairs and I saw her, I knew. And anyways, there was somebody else at work there. His name's Danny. And I didn't really know him at that point, but I got to know him pretty well, and I figured the only way I was going to be able to pursue her was to start volunteering at the church. So I went through all the proper channels, filled out all the proper paperwork, and started volunteering. And funny, when I was filling out the paperwork and stuff, there's like questions on there. Are you, I can't remember exactly, but my DUI I brought up my DUI and like, yada, yada, yada. And I'm in recovery and so on and so forth. And I remember her asking me about it. And I said, yeah, that was in the past. At the time, I was almost 4 years sober, I think. And so anyways, I'm volunteering with her pretty much on a weekend type thing. So I would go there on Sundays and volunteer and basically do whatever she asked me to do. And
still the case today.
Yeah, still the case today. And simultaneously getting to know Danny, who she worked with pretty closely. Her and Danny were like in charge of the whole campus. And so I got close to Danny, and I would always ask him, hey, when can I ask out Amanda? And for 6 months, he kept telling me no. And finally, I got fed up with it. I just said, Danny, listen, with all due respect, I'm not listening to you anymore. And I didn't ask her out. I kind of manipulated my way into it. It was a Sunday. It was first service was happening. It was busy, and she was doing her thing and, coordinating the campus, making sure everything was going smoothly. And I said, hey, I'm going to run over to Starbucks, which was walking distance. Do you want anything? And she says, yeah, I'll take something. And I said, well, you don't have my number. And, or I don't have, I can't remember exactly, but I'm like, you're going to have to text me your order. And that's how I got her number. And it took a long time, for that to take place. And, she texted me her order. And from there, we just started, texting back and forth and, going on some dates and stuff like that. And there was one point where she, actually, she wanted to go to dinner, and I'm like, oh, sweet. We're going to go to dinner. And her plan was to break up with me.
Get out.
At this dinner.
See,
yeah.
I haven't heard this part.
Yeah. We went to City Cellar, and her plan the whole entire time was to break up with me. But for what she says, and you could ask her about it to this day, she doesn't know why, but she felt like this, and this sounds super cheesy, but like that's when she kind of knew, okay, rather than breaking up with him, this is the man I'm going to marry type thing. Now, from a Christian perspective, that does not sound out of the ordinary. To somebody that's not a Christian, that sounds freaking weird. How do you go from wanting to break up with somebody to, wanting to marry them all in the same dinner? Like from appetizer to dessert, you go from wanting to break up to, willing to commit your life to that person. So, yeah.
Maybe we should start a new podcast line. How to win over a date in 1 hour. One meal.
Yeah. From appetizer to dessert. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, but I'm glad I went through that process in my sobriety,
But let's break this down for a second. Like, I am glad you shared all that, because it gives all the listeners an idea of, the time that it takes. Like, in regards to what we were talking about, Tom was 4 years sober, right? Volunteering at a church, regardless of his motives. He was able to fill out the paperwork and get through there and be able to volunteer, and could afford Starbucks, had a cell phone, had a car, buy dinner, had a car. You picked her up? Or she met you there?
No, well, that was one of the things about her. She was very strict on boundaries. So, like, she would meet me at a lot of places in the beginning, just to make sure I wasn't a total creep.
See, listen to that. That sounds like a healthy woman looking out.
Oh,
For
dude, it was like legit when we first started dating. She would not go out with me, just her and I. It had to be like there had to be friends around us and stuff because, without airing any of her dirty laundry, it's not dirty, I suppose, it's just laundry. She had some bad breakups and stuff, and she was just being protective of herself, and didn't want to be hurt or put herself in a position to be hurt. And, I think it was more of like, hey, I'm willing to explore this, but within certain parameters. And it was frustrating for me because all I wanted to do was just go out and have a good time, and, like do stuff just us.
But that's the difference right there between somebody in recovery 4 years and somebody that's brand new. Someone in early recovery typically would have gotten frustrated and given up. It's not, as Tom always puts it, the low-hanging fruit. And one thing that I always say to our clients too is like the person that you want to be with now is not the same person you're going to want to be with when you're done with 12 steps. We change as people through the process of getting sober, and then what I'm looking for is not the same. And let's look at it from this perspective too. And Tom had mentioned earlier in the podcast, like this is something we've run into quite a bit in the last couple of weeks, But when you consider the circumstances, obviously this is going to happen. We're not talking about this to dissuade people from going to treatment whatsoever. We just want people to be aware if they are seeking treatment, because the thing is, you come in here, you're broken, right? Most of us have been through some sort of trauma. I think everybody in life in general, alcoholic or not, has been through some sort of trauma. But you get into treatment, you're sitting in these intimate groups discussing topics that, let's face it, you get close with the people in the group, and it's really easy to identify with a female or a male in there and be like, oh my God, they understand me. You know what I mean? And from there, it's two people going through an experience together. They're in the same place in life, like trying to fill that void really quickly with what we call a rehab romance. I'm glad Tom talked about this because like he had that same experience in treatment. I did the same thing. First treatment center I ever went to, there was a young lady there that was coming up on a year of sobriety. I had like 30 days in their program. She was living in the place's sober house at this point. And in my mind, I was like, oh, wow, this girl's been here for almost a year. She must know what she's doing, right? She can show me how to be sober. It should have been a red flag to me, like, hey, this girl's still here and she's still getting therapy multiple times a week. Maybe something's not right. And I will tell you, it did not end good for the both of us. Probably some of the most traumatic experiences of my life came through that relationship, so to speak. But point is like early recovery is not the time to be getting into a relationship. It really isn't, for so many reasons. And it's so easy to get sucked into. You thought you met that special person in treatment, but really, like, therapists will often refer to it as a trauma bond, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, it's there's always emotions tied to it, whether you're ready for a relationship or not. You don't just meet somebody and decide to get with them or be with them or whatever without some sort of emotional bond. And when we get clean and sober, we're just now starting to figure out what our emotions are. And a lot of times what people do is they will look for, and I've said this 1,000 times over, look for some sort of external solution for an internal problem. And that's why therapists often refer to it as a trauma bond, because there are, traumas, experiences that both men and women have gone through that they're now carrying that with them, and they no longer have the substances used to kind of tamper that down. So they're raw emotions, they're raw feelings. And I think it's natural for people like us to want to not feel that. And one of the easiest ways to not feel that, and I reference this in the group, is relationships, generally sexual in nature, or money. And one of the two people, those are what will knock you off kilter per se. It's going to take your eye off of what is ultimate. I've seen so many people that have gotten clean, gotten sober, are on the right trajectory, but then this job opportunity comes up. And this job opportunity requires many, many hours. The pay's phenomenal, and then other things kind of go by the wayside, and ultimately all you're left with is your job and your raw emotions and your feelings, because the job doesn't take away that. It doesn't fix that stuff. It's still there. Same with relationships. And Andy Stanley refers to this in the Rules of Love, Sex, and Dating. He says, single people, before you get married, you need to resolve and work through your traumas. Because if you don't, those traumas, those dysfunctional relationships, those sorts of things will come up in your marriage, and that is what's going to drive a wedge between you and your spouse, whoever that is. And I've seen that in my marriage. Like, keep in mind, I came into this marriage, I went through this process of recovery. I went through the process of having a sponsor, having a therapist for a long time, really understanding a lot about myself and why I did the things that I did. My wife is a quote unquote normie. She went through life, had her experiences with her father and just her whole family dynamic, and there's some dysfunction there. And she didn't have a lot of the opportunity that I did to work through that stuff. So full transparency, some of that has carried into my marriage. She has stuff with her father that she hasn't worked through, and it does come out sideways and falls on me sometimes. And so that's where, thank God, I'm in recovery and I'm able to pick up on that and notice it, because two people that aren't, I could see that derailing a marriage big time, and that was a huge experience that I had to go through, and her as well.
The other thing I want to touch on, logistically speaking, where we watch this go sideways a lot of times, is two people will meet in treatment, for instance, and they will give anything just to be together. And what we end up seeing happen is a lot of shortcuts happen, where they'll cut out a treatment early, or they won't have solid footing financially, and they'll both sign a lease on an apartment that in their head they think they can afford, but they don't have life experiences. A lot of times they're just coming, they are just coming out of addiction. They're not good with money. They don't have these life skills in order, and logistically speaking, they start taking these shortcuts and end up setting themselves up in a situation that is just absolutely doomed for failure from the get-go. And so what we don't want to see is people getting together, then they're willing to throw everything in their recovery away that they've been working for just to make sure that they're together in a way that's like doesn't have a solid foundation. Now, if two people, for instance, I'm not necessarily condoning this, so to speak, but if two people meet in treatment, keep boundaries through the entire thing, go their separate ways to separate sober houses, maybe if that's the case, and, a year and a half down the road decide to move in together, hey, I'm not going to poo-poo that, so to speak. If somebody's true, our Tech Eric here has a good saying, good AA boy meets good AA girl on AA campus and both are good AAs, they'll make for a good couple or something like that. I forget exactly how it goes, but point is putting the recovery first and allowing this stuff to fall in line. And what I guess the best way to summarize it is not forcing a situation. Let the process of recovery happen. Don't force a situation. And because we see this all the time, two people are just in their heads. They're like Tom was saying about his story, he's going to go to West Virginia to be with this woman. Like, a lot of times, Tom, thankfully, had more of a head on his shoulders. The day that most of the time, like what I could see happening is she discharges treatment and Tom AMAs right after her.
Right.
They get an airplane ticket together, Like legitimately, like this is what we see all the time.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. It's sick. I mean, it's, it's fantasy land is all it is.
And then you hear, oh, so and so overdosed together, and this, that, the other. Both are in detox again. Like,
Or they bring a child into the world.
yeah,
And I know two people right now, some years ago, they met in rehab and they ended up getting pregnant and they brought a child into the world and they're both struggling, and now you got this child that, has really a serious, uphill battle. It's unfortunate, but that is, something that, is real life scenarios that we see often. And we do our best. We say, listen, we're not the sex police, but we are here to share with you our experiences. And so I think the point in all this is to help you understand, or your loved one understand, that priorities have to stay in line. We want people to get in relationships. We want people to have healthy relationships, loving relationships. We want you to have all of those things. But you have to do some work first. You have to put yourself in a position to be able to handle it properly. Because just because you get into a relationship with somebody doesn't mean that it's always going to work. And when it doesn't work, and in fact, the majority of the times they won't, you have to be prepared to handle that without picking up a drink or a drug. And that takes time.
that's where people in early recovery fall short.
Yeah.
That honeymoon phase ends. And the honeymoon phase, and if we talk about it from a scientific perspective, biological perspective, oxytocin, the love drug in your brain, like you get that huge release. You got that honeymoon phase. It's exciting. You get the butterflies in your stomach. What happens when all that's gone? And now you're through the treatment process. You're in early recovery. Your support's not good because you ditched it for this other person. You alienated everybody else so that you could be with this person. And now all of a sudden you're standing alone.
Yeah.
That's what we see.
That's when I pick up a Budweiser,
Yep.
Jim Beam, little Wild Turkey. I was a Wild Turkey drinker. I had a lot of that too.
I was a vodka guy. Kettle One.
Ugh. Well, I mean, that's sophisticated alcohol,
Yeah.
high class drunk.
Yeah, I like to think so.
Yeah. I was at the end drinking $7 half gallons of whiskey.
$7. What's
$7. It was a Bankers Club, I think is what it was called. It was $7, I think, for a half gallon. It might have been a fifth or something. I have no idea. But yeah, I'd fill up Dr. Pepper bottles, and because it kind of resembled close, fill it like 3/4 whiskey, quarter Dr. Pepper. Go to Lawrence County Fair. Me and my buddy Joe, we'd walk through the fair with our Bankers Club whiskey and look at all the cows and stuff, because we were kind of, he had a farm and I worked on the farm with him and stuff like that, so we were country boys. Anyways, listen, hope that helped you. And if in fact you have some sort of comment, question, or concern about your specific situation, you can always reach out to myself, Tom at realrecoverytalk.com, and Ben at realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you
turn your mess into your message.
That is it. We will see y'all later.